Here is your high-retention YouTube documentary script. No headings, no bullet points, just a continuous, cinematic voiceover narrative designed to keep viewers locked in until the very last second. Imagine you're sitting in a small, pale gray room. The air is cold. There's a faint buzzing from the fluorescent lights above. Across the table, a police officer looks you right in the eyes, leans forward with a calm, almost friendly expression and says, "Look, if you didn't do anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. Just help us out. What's the harm in telling your side of the story?" It sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Almost polite. But here's the truth they don't want you to hear. That single question is one of the most dangerous psychological traps ever designed, and every year it convinces innocent people to throw away their rights, their freedom, and sometimes the rest of their lives. What would you say if an officer asked you that right now? Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why answering that question is the biggest mistake you could ever make. And more importantly, you're going to learn the 3 words that stop the trap cold. But first, we have to go back to a quiet apartment where one man's desire to be helpful turned into a nightmare that lasted over 2 decades. Let me introduce you to someone you've probably never heard of. His name is Thomas. And Thomas was a law-abiding citizen, just like you. One afternoon, there was a minor car break-in near his neighborhood. No weapons, no violence, just a stolen laptop from a parked car. Police were going door to door, asking if anyone had seen anything. When they knocked on Thomas's door, he did what most of us would do. He opened it. He smiled. He wanted to be a good neighbor. The officer said, "We're just talking to people in the area. You're not in trouble. But if you didn't do anything wrong, you don't mind answering a few questions, right?" Thomas agreed. He had nothing to hide. And that was the last smart decision he made that day. Here's where it gets strange. What started as a 2-minute conversation about a car break-in slowly morphed into something else entirely. The officer asked Thomas where he was the night before. Thomas told him. Then the officer asked again, but with slightly different wording. Thomas repeated himself. Then the officer pointed out a tiny inconsistency. Not a lie, just a difference in how Thomas described the timeline. And suddenly, the tone shifted. The officer said, "It's interesting that you're changing your story. Innocent people usually don't do that." Thomas felt his stomach drop. He wasn't changing his story, he was just nervous. But now, the trap had been sprung. Because the moment you agree to talk, the officer's only job is to find something, anything, that looks like deception. And when you're scared, sitting under bright lights, facing an authority figure, you will make mistakes. You will stumble over words. You will forget small details. And to a trained interrogator, that looks exactly like guilt. But the really terrifying part? Thomas didn't even match the description of the person they were looking for. He was the wrong height, wrong build, everything. But he had made one critical error. He had answered the question. And once you start answering, it is incredibly difficult to stop. This changes everything you think you know about police encounters. Because most people believe that if you're innocent, cooperation is your shield. They think the truth will protect them. But the reality is completely different. In the American legal system, your words are not a shield. They are evidence. And evidence can be twisted, misinterpreted, and used against you, even when you have done absolutely nothing wrong. Let me give you the cold, hard legal fact. The 5th Amendment to the United States Constitution gives you the right to remain silent. But here's what almost nobody talks about. That right is not automatic. You have to actively use it. If you just stay quiet, a prosecutor can argue in court that your silence looks suspicious. But if you say the magic words, "I am exercising my right to remain silent," everything changes. The police cannot punish you for saying that. They cannot continue questioning you once you clearly invoke it. And yet, most people have no idea this protection exists until it's too late. So why do police ask that specific question? If you didn't do anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. It's brilliant, really, and terrifying, because it exploits the single most powerful force in human psychology, our need to be seen as good, cooperative, and innocent. The question frames silence as guilt. It makes saying no feel rude or suspicious. It weaponizes your own politeness against you. And it works almost every single time. Think about a traffic stop. An officer walks up to your window and says, Do you know why I pulled you over? What's your instinct? Most people immediately start apologizing or explaining. I think I was going a little over. Or, my brake light is out, isn't it? Congratulations, you just confessed. Not to a crime necessarily, but to awareness. You gave the officer exactly what they needed to write that ticket. The smarter move? A simple, polite, "No, sir, I'm not sure." Let them do the work. But that feels wrong, doesn't it? It feels defensive, and that's exactly why the trap is so effective. Almost nobody talks about this part, but law enforcement manuals actually teach this technique. It's called the read technique, and it's used in police academies across the United States and the United Kingdom. One of the core principles is to isolate the suspect, minimize their perception of the crime's seriousness, and then present cooperation as the only logical path. The officer is trained to be your friend, to offer you a way out, to say things like, "Look, I know you didn't mean for this to happen. Just tell me your side and we can clear this up." And when you hear that, something dangerous happens in your brain. You start to believe that if you just explain yourself well enough, the officer will let you go. You start editing your story in real time, trying to sound more credible. You start adding details you aren't sure about just to fill the silence. And every single word you say is being written down, recorded, and will be repeated back to you in a courtroom months later, frozen in time, while the prosecutor points out every tiny contradiction. And then something unexpected happens. The officer leaves the room. You sit there alone, heart pounding, replaying everything you just said. 5 minutes pass, 10 minutes. Then the officer comes back with a file folder. He doesn't even open it. He just places it on the table and says, "We have witness statements that don't match what you told me." This is a lie. It is a legally permissible lie in most jurisdictions. The police are allowed to lie to you about evidence. They can tell you your friend already confessed. They can tell you they have your fingerprints. They can tell you they have video, and none of it has to be true. But you don't know that. And in that moment, the pressure becomes unbearable. You start to wonder if maybe you did forget something. Maybe you were there. Maybe you were going crazy. And the only way to prove your innocence, you think, is to keep talking. That is the open loop. That is the mystery I promised you at the beginning. Why would an innocent person ever confess to a crime they didn't commit? It seems illogical. It seems insane. And yet, according to the National Registry of Exonerations, nearly 30% of wrongful convictions involved a false confession. 30%. These aren't weak-willed people. These are normal, intelligent, everyday citizens who fell into the exact trap we're talking about. Let me walk you through exactly how this works in the UK, because the law is slightly different, but the psychology is identical. In England and Wales, the right to silence is protected by the Criminal Justice and Public Order Act of 1994. However, here's the catch. If you remain silent and later rely on a defense in court, the judge or jury can draw an adverse inference, meaning they can ask, "If you were truly innocent, why didn't you tell the police that at the time?" Sounds scary, right? That's what the police want you to think. But here's what they don't advertise. An adverse inference cannot be the sole reason for a conviction. And more importantly, you can protect yourself by giving a simple, pre-written statement. Something like, "I am advised not to answer questions at this time." That's it. You've cooperated, you've given a statement, and you haven't walked into the trap. But the trap isn't just about confessions, it's about memory. And this is where the neuroscience gets truly unsettling. When you tell a story multiple times under pressure, your brain actually rewires that memory. It's called the misinformation effect. You start to adopt the officer's phrasing, their timeline, their suggestions. Psychologists have proven that simply asking a leading question like, "How fast was the car going when it smashed into the tree?" versus "hit the tree," changes how people remember the event. The word "smashed" makes people recall broken glass that wasn't there. Now imagine that over a 3-hour interrogation. You aren't just giving information, you are being programmed. And then something truly terrifying happens. You leave the station. You think the nightmare is over, but months later you get a letter. You're being charged, and the primary evidence against you is your own statement. Those small inconsistencies they pulled out of you, that's now the foundation of their case. Your nervous laughter, that's consciousness of guilt. Your repeated denials, that's protestation too much. Everything you said, which felt like cooperation at the time, has been weaponized into a narrative of guilt. So what do you actually do? You're driving home from work. It's late. You see the flashing lights in your rearview mirror. Your heart jumps into your throat. The officer walks up, asks for your license and registration, and then says those fateful words. Step out of the car. Do you know why I pulled you over? Or worse, we're investigating a serious incident. We'd like you to come down to the station to clear a few things up. You're not under arrest. We just want to talk. That last phrase is the most dangerous sentence in the English language. We just want to talk. Because if you're not under arrest, you think you can leave any time. But you can't. The moment you walk into that station, you have lost control. The door locks behind you, and the clock starts ticking on one of the most high-pressure psychological games ever devised. But here's the secret they don't want you to know. You have a superpower, and it's 3 words long. You do not have to be rude. You do not have to be aggressive. You do not have to be the angry sovereign citizen type who ends up on a viral video. You simply have to say, calmly and politely, I am not answering questions, or I am exercising my right to remain silent. And then, this is the hardest part, you stop talking. You don't explain why. You don't say, because my lawyer told me. You don't say, I'm innocent, but just silence. Let the silence hang in the air. It will feel awful. It will feel suspicious. It will feel like you're making things worse. You are not. You are protecting your future self. Let me tell you about the most famous example of this trap in recent history. Brendan Dassey from the documentary Making a Murderer. He was 16 years old, low IQ, no prior record. The police asked him that exact question. If you didn't do anything wrong, just tell us what happened. They promised he could go home. They promised they were just clearing things up. 6 hours later, after leading questions, false promises, and psychological exhaustion, Brendan gave a detailed confession to a crime he almost certainly had nothing to do with. That confession sent him to prison for nearly a decade. And even though a federal magistrate later called the interrogation coercive and improper, the damage was done. His words, given under pressure, became the only evidence the state needed. This is not an outlier. This is a system designed around confession. Police are not required to be your friend. They are not required to be fair. They are required to close cases. And a confession closes a case faster than any DNA test or alibi witness ever could. They don't need to believe you are guilty. They just need you to say the words. But wait, there's a deeper layer here. Something most lawyers won't even tell you. The police are not actually required to stop questioning you just because you ask for a lawyer in every situation. That's right. In the United States, the famous Miranda right to counsel only applies during custodial interrogation. If you are not under arrest, if you are free to leave, you can ask for a lawyer until you're blue in the face. The officer can simply say, "You're not under arrest, so that right hasn't kicked in yet. Now about that car you were driving." This is why the only safe answer is not just a lawyer, but a complete and total stop to answering substantive questions. So what does this look like in real life? Let me paint you a scene. You're at home. There's a knock on the door. 2 detectives. They say there's been an incident at your workplace, and they're talking to everyone who was in the building that day. They ask if they can come in. You say no, politely, and step outside. They ask if you'd be willing to come down to the station. You say, I will come in voluntarily, but I will not be answering questions without my attorney present. They say, why do you need an attorney if you didn't do anything wrong? There it is, the trap, right on your doorstep. And now you have a choice. Defend yourself, justify yourself, explain why you're a good person, or simply repeat, I will not be answering questions. Am I free to go? And then the magic happens. Most of the time, they leave. Because people who actually have something to hide, they usually can't resist talking. They over-explain. They offer alibis. They try to manipulate the conversation. The person who says nothing, that terrifies them. Because they have no idea what you know, and without your words, they have nothing. Before we close this loop, I need to answer the question I asked you at the very beginning. Why does that question work? Why do smart, rational, good people fall for it every single day? It's because we are wired for social cooperation. For thousands of years, the person who refused to answer the tribe's questions was cast out. Silence meant guilt in the village. It meant you were hiding something dangerous. That instinct is still inside you. It takes conscious effort, real courage to override it and say, I will not talk. That's not paranoia. That's not anti-police. That's self-preservation. And it is your right. So here's your takeaway. The next time someone with a badge asks you to just explain your side, remember Thomas. Remember Brendan. Remember the 30%. Your politeness will not save you. Your innocence will not protect you. Only your silence will. You can be cooperative. You can be respectful. You can hand over your license, your registration, your insurance. But you do not have to hand over your story. Because once you tell it, it no longer belongs to you. It belongs to them. And they will use it. The trap is old, it is effective, and it is waiting for you. But now, you see the wires. You see the bait. And you know the 3 words that disarm the whole thing. I am not answering questions. Say them calmly. Say them clearly. And then say nothing else. Your future self will thank you. If you got value from this, I want you to do something for me. In the comments right now, write the word silent. Just that one word. Not because I'm asking you to be rude to police, but because you are declaring that you understand the power of your own voice. And if you have a story, a close call, a moment where you almost fell for this or you're glad you didn't, share it. Because the more we talk about this trap, the less effective it becomes. Stay informed, stay smart, and never forget, the most dangerous question isn't the one they ask, it's the one you answer.